And Holly, are you still on? I see her here, but I don't hear her, so I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to go ahead and call this governance committee in order. But I kind of need Holly to help me with the approvals, especially since Irene isn't on.
And Holly, just say no, you're muted, just in case you're saying something.
I think she was trying to get to her house. She was close to her driveway, she said.
And
Yeah.
we have to, sorry.
Yeah, approve the meeting agenda. And then approve the minutes. So.
I'm back. I'm sorry. It just
No worries.
I went around the corner right before my house, and I of course lost internet.
Gotcha.
So okay, I am back, and I am on my porch, which is where I'm gonna
Plant yourself.
Yes.
Okay. So I've called the meeting to order, and now we need to approve the meeting agenda.
Motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
Okay, and we don't have a second, but since we do have the majority of us, are we allowed to vote? We are?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the March 4th, 2020 committee meeting minutes.
I can make a motion to approve.
Okay. And without a second, I guess we'll go to the vote. So all in favor of the approve? Oh, well, are there any questions, Holly, about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote to approve the March 4th, 2020 committee meeting minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion is approved. All right, going on to old business, the proposed employee code of conduct. We did get feedback from Jennifer Parrish, and in our last meeting, we had talked about using Jennifer. As Lisa was saying, as a committee of two, she was quite swamped with the student code of conduct, and it was going to be a few more months till she could get to it. And so we opted to use our legal counsel then as an option B for continuity of care, if you will, as she is someone who has counseled us for Stafford County Schools on other employee matters. So Ms. Parrish's response, Holly, did you get a chance to review her response?
Yes. I mean, it seemed like overall she was pretty, happy with it. It seems like my comment, and Lisa, I'm certainly looking for your thoughts as well. As we are now, I mean, remember this discussion was pre-COVID-19.
It was. It was.
Now that we have so many platforms for communication between staff and students, I actually think that the communication piece in this is something we just need to be really clear, because, and it's for the protection of our employees as much.
Truly.
Of making sure that they are steered towards approved or Google, whatever the school district is going to be using, that we really want to make sure that those platforms are going to be used, because you just would hate for there to be some, well, I mean, we know we've talked about it in the past. So Lisa, or even technology, Dr. Kisner, any thoughts on that? Or, I mean, anyway, that's just kind of come to mind in the last couple of weeks, having sat on how many of these meetings.
Right.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
No, as I recall from the last meeting, Jennifer was going to give some guidance. She wanted a little bit more time to study the employee-student relations piece. And I think that to the extent, I haven't seen what she sent, but to the extent that she may have addressed some of those communication concerns in that area, that may be a good thing. Just looking at the very first bullet of this, maybe that communication section should be beefed up a little bit because it refers specifically to social media. Perhaps we should also talk about online learning platforms and add that piece.
And I would say, we have the online learning platforms, but as and we're talking about how the communication and the accessibility of teachers to students in this kind of off-kiltered way right now. We were talking about social media, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that gaming is another avenue in which, the
True.
teachers are also communicating or interacting even with students. So I think, and one of the things that Jennifer had said in her last communication with Holly and I was about the communication piece, and just saying that in this day and age, and again, Holly's correct in us having some experience with this, is teachers are texting students, but maybe we need to make sure that the text, for instance, on band trips, a teacher, a chaperone may say, you 5 are in my chaperone group. Here's my number. Let's text in the group for safety reasons or what have you. So that was a piece where she said that the texting might come into question on instances where teachers I can't send an email and trust that you're going to see it. I need to send a text because I know that you'll get it. But that having either, similar with the scouting, having either a second, a parent in on the text or several students on a text and not leaving it to the one-on-one was something that she had mentioned in the letter to Holly and I. And Holly, you can elaborate if you would like.
Thing that I would want to say, and maybe what we need to do is reach back out to Jennifer and say, okay, now since we've kind of gotten some of your initial thoughts on this, now in this whole new environment, what other areas come to mind? Because I am not trying to chill expression and communication between students and their instructors. However, I do think there is a line that we have to be very careful of, and Dr. Kisner, I think you were going to jump in as well, but just like I said, this is not meant to punish. It's really meant to protect, because we all have seen the texts that go awry, and we meant to say that, I don't know. I think it's for everybody's protection, and also for even parents to be aware, do you want your student on this? Do you really want to give your potential number out to students? Do you want to use these group me apps or other things that are like texting apps but are protecting everyone's privacy? I don't know. And that I'm speaking technology, you all know it's a bad day.
Yeah, so let me just offer a couple of thoughts. I do think the balance is what you guys are discussing, is how do we not adversely impact the instruction and communication, but also protecting the staff and students. So one thing I may offer before you come to a final recommendation to the entire board is whatever is to allow not only a legal opinion, because a legal opinion will look at it in a certain way, but maybe some of our technology instructional people to also give some thoughts on this, because I'm not by any means going to try to give an impression of being an expert, but I will say that communication has increased greatly through technology in multiple ways. And I will just say this from many years' experience. You could have the most stringent policy in the world. The person that's going to do something wrong is still going to do something wrong. I mean, policies, when you cross that line, you don't need a policy to know when somebody is acting completely unacceptable. So I think the policy should be more of what you, and maybe you're not, and I don't think you're saying this, of not focusing on what you can't do, but more focusing on the parameters of what you could do. And I think again, I mean, I just know personally, I'm getting parents texting me that used to email me. They have my number, and they're saying he probably won't check his email or won't respond as quickly. And I get, you know, there's not a week probably doesn't go by that I don't get a text from a parent. So I guess really what I'm saying, I'm remarkably supportive that staff need some parameters and guidelines, and that has to happen. I would just, again, I'm not the right person. Jay Cook and some of the building ITRTs could probably, when you get to the point where you want a review, to allow them to review it, because they may raise a concern that that we're not thinking about. Yeah.
And I recall too that Patrick also received Holly had sent it to him, and so that he could see, you know, from a HR standpoint, if there was something that we had missed as well. And I agree, this isn't necessarily, you know, I mean, you can put locks on your doors all day long, but if someone wants in your house, they're coming in. But, you know, I just feel like you said, like you're saying, that giving the opportunity for, hi Irene, giving opportunity for those new teachers especially that maybe don't know that line, or, you know, might have a different sense of professionalism or understanding the nature of what we're using our technology or communications for. It just might make it a little more clear to them. And also, if it comes to an issue with the board, it helps us to understand what's allowed, not allowed in very specific terms as well.
I'm totally in agreement. And I think the questions really expands beyond just technology. I mean, there are some boundary things that we have to remind staff they need to respect, okay? And I don't need to get into specifics. You all understand that there's potential of a violation of boundaries. So I think people do need to know. I need to know when I'm on I-95 that going 80 miles an hour is unacceptable. So having those 65-mile signs reminds me to watch how fast I'm going.
And there's obviously there's a lot of other elements in this document that we're talking about. But, you know, as Holly said, with our changing time, we want to make sure that, you know, we don't know if this is going to come again. We just don't know, you know, for a new teacher coming in, and this is how we're working right now. You know, we want to make sure that everybody is up to speed, and but that we're up to speed too with what's allowed, what are we using with Stafford County Schools, what's approved platforms that we're saying, yes, that's okay. So that we can make sure that we're not all of a sudden creating something that causes more problems for our teachers than help.
And this is something that could,
go ahead, Lisa.
And this is something that could be incorporated into the employee onboarding too, so that people are aware of what the expectations for behavior are for staff.
Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Holly.
And I think that was kind of where I was going, because, you know, Dr. Kisner, hearing you say, you know, now you have parents that are, you know, texting you. My thing is, we do have teachers who have their home life. I know you do too, but I'm just saying, let's say we have something or a school shuts down. There's going to be some of those parents who are going to like reach right out to that teacher and bombard them. And I'm really trying to protect their time as well, if that makes sense of what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
It's trying to do that. And I think in that onboarding, as Lisa talked about, it's a discussion of the policy, but then there's also a presentation of, you know, these are the areas, you know, use Google, whatever we're on, or whatever we're suggesting them to use, because I think we have to show the challenges, but also give them some of the either solutions, or here is the preferred way to do it. Because if you go offline and you start on this, something can get misinterpreted, and you just want, we're trying to protect everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is like really important, that whatever our conversations are about technology, it has to be school related. I mean,
Yes.
that to me, I can't think of an example where a staff member should be having a conversation with a student that's not related to the curriculum or the activity that's been sanctioned by the school system.
Right. So I think then,
and if I may, I'm sorry if I.
No, go ahead.
First of all, I'm sorry I'm late. I had a little episode here in my rental, and my landlord has to come when he's available, and so here I am. So getting back to the beginning of the conversation that I missed, I assume that we're trying to. Is this open for? Is this an open meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I won't mention names. In order to refrain from being in a position that we were all in when we had to look at a particular employee, I want to make sure that we're going forward with this particular policy, so that we don't have to do this again. That this was painful for me, especially, and you guys all know why. I don't want to have to do this again. So this is really important to me to make sure that we've got all of the priorities in place and all that stuff. So if there's something that I missed regarding that you think I need to know, please tell me.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think, having this in place, again, protecting the teachers, helping, with us, but like Lisa said, with the onboarding aspect of it, I think it's important that we get closer to getting this to the whole board. I do also agree with, Jennifer Parrish's recommendation is for us to look at that communication piece, and that was all pre-COVID. And so I agree with Dr. Kisner and his recommendation of now letting our technology people make sure that we've got the technology platform piece or possibilities covered too. Because, we'd like to prevent things if we can prevent things, but we also want to be helpful to, new teachers and even current teachers, so that there's, like you say, let's not have a repeat. Holly, what do you think?
I think, so what I'm hearing, and I think you're hearing, let's reach back out to Jennifer with the highlights of, look at this new age and how this online learning, is there, in light of that, are there any things you would add, subtract, how we believe the policy should cover that. Dr. Kisner, I don't know if you're willing to pull together sort of either a team or a group to sort of look at that, or even just some teachers. But I do think it's important to have this as part of the onboarding as we begin the school year. So I kind of think it needs to stay on a fast track, at least to get it in front of our board, because I really do think this is the protection of everybody's time and other things, because of this now potential ability to be in touch all the time. And that's,
Yeah.
When you guys are ready, we can put together a small, smart, quick group. Right? That could
if we could get somebody from Jay Cook's team, maybe Patrick's team, to just give us a quick look over at this. I can send you Jennifer Parrish's recommendations. They can either look at with those, and so then we can bundle it one more time to her. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, because you could actually take this to the board in the first meeting in June, have it adopted by the second meeting, and then that would get us for the summer onboarding.
Okay.
Okay, I say let's.
All right, if that's what.
Let's go. Okay. All right.
Have you guys addressed the question by another board member yet about the review by attorney?
I did. I mentioned in the very beginning that of course, our original was to use Lisa, but Lisa has been tied with the student code of conduct. She's on a time schedule as well. And so the earliest that she could even have reviewed was June. In an effort to try to make sure this was something that was moving along. Sorry for the boat behind me. It's fishing time, I guess. Anyways, I think that
Susan.
I was like, fishing boats right now? Okay. But I just think that that was that was our reasoning, was, to know that we couldn't even get this touched unless, and since Jennifer is somebody that we use for our personnel matters, and so for continuity of care, if you will, we opted to, if something were to happen, we would use her for it anyways. So we'd like her to be familiar with it. Would you say that's about right, Holly?
Yes, and Dr. Kisner, when he too, I mean, this is somebody we go to for personnel matters. Yeah. We want that person to feel comfortable with the policy, feel like it is not something that they would be.
No, Jennifer is very knowledgeable. She's good to work with.
I think she's amazing, and I just wanted to clarify something. This is not just a school board action where we're seeking legal counsel for something. This is kind of we're all acting as a group to protect and to better the school division, which would fall under Dr. Kisner's leadership. So I don't necessarily think that there has to be a board vote every time a committee decides that they need to get a reference or a review from an attorney. So I want to make sure that we're not getting into this whole where every standing committee under the school board has to have the full school board approval to get an approval from the full school board to review something that they're considering bringing before the board. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I think the comment I would make there is, when this policy or whatever the action that gets recommended from this committee or any committee, should there be any legal background, that would be in the shared materials with all board members for them to be able to read whatever the background is. If it is something legal in nature, it would be in the section how Missy would, share it that way.
Right.
My concern is that another board member raised a question about what our power was as a committee to seek legal counsel, legal review of a policy that we were going to present to the board as a whole. And I don't want to get into the weeds with that, because if that happens every single time that the governance committee, whether we're on it or not, that every time we're looking to do something, we're going to have to wait all of these weeks
meetings
in order to get something reviewed, and that is
counterproductive.
I think we're moving forward fine. I think we're good. I think the selection is our usual, and the person that deals with employee matters, I think we move forward, and if changes want to come, but I think right now we keep pushing the ball forward. That's where I think. And I
agree.
As long as we're getting our answers back to the other board members who have raised them, then I'm fine with that. So.
And I did let them know that the answer would be tonight. So, okay, we're moving on to the next one, which is our school board retreat. Originally, we had opted to do like just kind of a easy dinner, fun thing for us in the April-May time span. Hello, COVID, wipe out. So we moved to, keep moving. We are still, we're still looking. Okay, if y'all want to just drive down here, come on. We'll social distance on a boat ride. It's okay. No, but looking forward to a school board retreat. I've got a couple of options that I reached out to Cambridge Strategic Services. They were involved. They spoke very highly of you, Dr. Kisner. But they were with us, involved in the strategic planning. They're familiar with that. And so the scope of work that he would do with us is going through individually interviewing us to see what our strengths and weaknesses are, help us to become, and as I've heard over and over and reading and doing all kinds of research today, that sometimes we're familiar with our roles and responsibility, but when the climate changes, like it is right now, or even new board members come on, some of those lines get blurred and fuzzy. So they're going to clarify our roles and responsibilities, making sure that they understand both from a superintendent's point of view and a board's point of view, the roles and responsibilities, the role of governance of the entire board, not just a committee, what our team's strengths are, because in actuality, we do function as a team, and to give some scenarios for us to work through. And it would be about a day and a half, like a Friday evening to about Saturday. I want to say it was like 3:30 or something. And it was $3,500 for this board training. Then I also,
Susan, for the whole board?
yes,
That's a steal.
yeah, it was $3,500 for everything. And then
So we provide the venue.
yes,
All right, so add another $3,000 to it. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
and so then I contacted VSBA, Samantha, and she's in charge of board development, and she reached back to me and said she could do similar in a day, start from like she said 9 to 2 or 9:30 to 2:30, and it would again be working on our strengths as board members, our weaknesses as board members. Again, looking back at our strategic plan, is there an update piece that is that we would like to go forward with? So there'll be some pre-homework to do before this happens, and then that day we work, and that one's $1,100. It didn't seem to have as clear a mission for the day, but it is an option.
Okay, so let me interrupt you and ask you real quick.
Sure.
The one day,
Yes.
will they do a weekend day? Because there are several people on this board that
Yes.
work Monday through Friday.
She sent me a long list of their available June and July, and the only thing that when I talked to her on the phone, she said it would be more like a virtual retreat, or an in-person retreat for the June and July timeframe. However, she emailed me back and said they're only allowed to schedule online, not in-person retreats right now.
Okay, so as you're looking at this,
Yes.
that was one of my main concerns was you've got board members who work during the week. You have staff members who are needed at central office. You have the superintendent who is direly needed at
Everywhere.
At central office. So while we're tapping into everybody's weekend, we're not pulling anyone away from their regular
Duties
regular duties during the week. So,
Okay.
So my advice to you, Susan, would be to whomever it is that you've talked to, narrow it down to a weekend, and the folks who don't work full time, it shouldn't be an issue for them to do a weekend.
No.
Okay. So.
And we're talking virtually now, so that also changes, where and who.
Actually, that doesn't really change anything, because I am at my dining room table at 8 o'clock in the morning, and here it is 6 o'clock at night, and I'm still sitting here.
Yeah.
I have been here all day long. I know Scott is doing the same thing. I'm sure Lisa's doing the same thing. Holly gets a treat. She gets to get in her car and drive down to Fredericksburg and then drive back home to do this. So, it's
Amen, Irene.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun for her. So my point is, I'm not picking on people who aren't working full time, but
Right.
they are more flexible than those
Yes.
of us that have to be at our computers at a certain time. So that's all I'm saying, Susan.
Okay.
I'm not or anything. We are right now we are the majority. All right.
Yes.
So Scott, Lisa, Chris, all of us. And we don't want to take away from weekend family time. However, we can't take away from living to provide for our families. So that's
True.
what I'm saying.
Okay, that works for me. I can definitely, like I said, she just assembled the list of dates for me, so I will look at them and see if I don't know that they are or are not weekends already in there, but I will double check. Like I said, she just sent out the list. So there's the Cambridge Strategic Services. He's up for anything because, again, we're online. So if I told him we wanted to do weekend, I'm sure he would accommodate. And I'm sure that's probably not uncommon for a lot of boards that need their training. And then, like I said, VSBA was another option. The third one, and I would just recommend this to the board, VSBA offered a webinar by Doug Eady and Company called Building High Impact Board Superintendent Partnership. He also has a book by the same name. And I sat through that at the beginning of.
Hold on 1 second, Holly.
That was a book we did with Dr. Benson.
Okay.
Can you mute? I know that you're typing and we can hear it. So if you could just mute, thank you. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so that's interesting though that you guys have done that book. So anyways, I listened to his webinar, which was huge and helpful to me. But then he also does board services, or like Holly said, you've done the book with him, but we can rediscuss it if that's another option. So there's 3 different options to consider for school board retreats. And, I can bring that before the board to see what their interests are. And like I said, I'll just double down to make sure that weekends are the available option, and they're both saying online. So if that makes sense.
Let me just give a couple thoughts. I think that this is going to be a small group of people. I really think it's going to be mostly the board and Dr. Kisner. And then if he wants to have 1 or maybe 2 other people on his team, I think that's fine. But I really think this is focused on the board. I would say, depending on where things are as we move into June and July, there is a possibility that even if the presenter is virtual, maybe we can do it like a movie watching party or something and have that person up on the screen, and we may be able to be in a room somewhat together or something like that to get some of that, because I do think it's going to be hard, in my opinion, to have us jump in one-on-one. I don't know. The facility, what we're trying to get out of it is not, to me, a video recommendation. So I'm just struggling with that part of whether maybe we can still have some partnering together, because I just can't see how we're going to do it. But,
Holly, can I interrupt you for a second, because there's a lot of assumptions being made here that while we're planning, that this is all going to be the same that we've been through in the past 6 or 7 weeks. The governor today, I watched it. He's relaxed a lot of stuff, and we might be able to do a whole lot more than what we thought we were going to do last week. So, given that, while Susan takes into consideration, in her planning activities, we should be looking at both social distancing venues, and we don't have to do virtual. We can do something, maybe looking at the Fredericksburg, what's that? What do they call it? It's the place where they have all the conferences and stuff.
Expo? Oh. Oh, conference center. Okay.
Yeah. So we block off a room and we have, to me, the retreats that I've always participated in have always included staff, so that if we were pondering things, looking for things, and it doesn't have to be full staff, it could just be like, top leadership. Tom, who used to be that kind of thing. And let's expand what we're doing here, because we're not as confined as we were before, is my point, Susan. So,
Yeah.
so let's have options, and like Scott's been doing. Scott's been operating on, if this happens, this is what we're going to have to do, and if this doesn't happen, this is what we're going to have to do. And I think we have to do the same thing as a board in preparing to do all of this stuff. So, if you need help, I'm happy to help you, because I know this puts a little bit more burden on you.
I don't feel burdened by it. It's just that I'm new to it, so I'm just interested in like doing things to make me and Liza, Dr. Warner, both being new, better board members. Those that are still here, rejuvenate you. And so I just kind of this is helpful to me to go forward.
We're not backing ourselves into a corner as far as what we're planning to do. I know Holly worked today. She didn't hear what happened today. What it sounds like to me is that we're opening up for kind of full business on the 15th, which is 2 Fridays from now, right?
Yeah.
So not full, but what I'm saying is that we have a lot more options than we did before. So take that into consideration when you're talking to folks and we're planning this.
Okay.
Sorry, Holly, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just didn't want you to spend a whole lot of calories when we didn't have to.
Well, and I also kind of think that for me, I mean, just as me, I like to be in person. You can kind of get a gist of how the flow, I don't know, you just get a lot better sense and feeling. So I'd rather it be in person. I understand the necessity of virtual for some cases, but I'd prefer the in-person.
Well, and I don't think it eliminates the possibility of people who are not comfortable with being there. So whatever,
and being respectful of the social distance.
Whatever we decide, the distance part, but whatever we decide, there should be an option for someone who's not comfortable being in a group of people yet, because I got to tell you, I'm not sure I'm comfortable being in a group, because our numbers keep going up, but yet politics are jumping in the way, and everybody's like, wait, I got cut off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want my health to take a dive because I'm worried about politics. But anyway, my point is that we should have accommodations for everyone.
Sure.
So accommodations should be for, if board member A doesn't want to be there and only wants to call in, then we have to make sure we have accommodations for that person.
Sure. Dr. Kisner, can you jump in and your insight on board retreats and thoughts?
Well, I think the goals of the retreat have to be defined, because if it's to build better working relationships and understanding among board members along with the superintendent, then I think that serves one purpose. If it's working with staff to talk about strategic planning, that serves, then you would have more staff. I think, honestly, I'm not sure the staff would want to be there if it's about building school board relationships and with the superintendent, but they would definitely want to be there if there's a conversation about how are we moving the school system forward.
Okay.
And that was kind of where I was going a little bit the reason I think we had tried initially to try and do a two-pronged one was to have the board be able to get together. I think we do continue to pull the board. I do think strategic planning is important, but I think there's some work we need to do before that. The Doug Eady book is a good book. We may, share that. But I do think that right now the focus should be the board, the superintendent, so that we can be a cohesive group. Not saying we will always agree, but we can be a cohesive group, because we are entering a very interesting time, as Irene is saying, and I didn't get to hear the conference. These are all, just like it was 6 weeks ago, ideas of what we'll be doing on these days. They can change in a heartbeat,
right,
depending on where things go. But I do think that the workings of the board is a critical piece, and I do think that that's something we still need to move forward with. So my vote is to still focus initially, not solely and not forever, on working together as a board, because I think that is something that all the board has requested. So I think that's the first, in my opinion.
Right. So I guess my next question would be: is this the right time to do this?
100%. 100%. I think it is, because we still have, I just think that there needs to be direction for us as a board, and I think the whole roles and responsibility piece needs to be updated, if you will, for us as well.
Because then we can, as we go into the fall, do, I hope, as we have done sometimes in the past, is working together to give the superintendent guidance on where do we want to go. And, COVID has been a big impact on that. And I think we as a board need to sit down and talk through it as a board. And I can't imagine that other organizations besides school boards aren't having the same kind of discussions, because what are things going to look like going forward? So I still think that's an important piece. I do think we need to be more in like the July timeframe. I don't know what response we got from people, but I think that makes more sense. But once everybody fills it out, if that's not it, we'll work around people's schedule to try and come up with the best options. I think if we can offer like 2 or 3 options and try to have people coalesce, I think that would be good to get it on the calendar.
Yeah, I would encourage, just because I think it's more effective, if we could do it face to face and not virtually.
Agreed.
So if we have to wait till late June, July, it's better than doing it earlier.
I would agree. Okay, so what I'll do for my homework then is work with the different venue options, or the different program options, so I can see a clear, Cambridge gave me the clearest list of how the day would progress, but I can work with VSBA a little bit more clearly as well. And so we have at least more than one option for the board to choose, and I'll put together some dates, and I'll even look into some venue options so I can be clear as to what the cost is for this. Does that sound about right?
Sounds like a way forward for me.
I think, okay, Larry.
Sorry, I missed it because I had to run to get my dog in because he was barking at somebody next door.
I was just saying that for my homework, I'll go ahead and look at the 2 different models from VSBA and Cambridge, and finalize their list, or kind of get a list of exactly what's going to be covered and the timeline, and then the cost, in addition to the cost of whatever venue I can look up and find. Is there a place in previous boards where you've done your retreats? Is it close, or is it far, or is it somewhere in between? Where is it?
We had them brought in. Dr. Benson brought them in to us, so we had them at Stafford Hospital. We tried to do it off-site, and it was very engaging, and it was valuable. So if we can find something, part of what I found very valuable was finding out how all of my other board members operate. I know how I am. I know who I am, and I know how I operate, and I think I even have a little bit of Scott Kisner in me, because but the point is that it gave me the person that was doing this study gave me an opportunity to look at one of my other board members and say, oh, that's why he or she does what they do. Or, oh, that's why that person responds to me the way that they do. Because nobody's the same, right?
Yeah, no.
So I found it very valuable to me, because it made me look at everybody that I was working with on the board in the sense that, okay, I'm not going to take that personally, because that's the kind of person that person is, and this is what they value, and blah, blah, blah. So if we can find something like that, God help us. I think it's really needed, because I feel like there's a divide, and I'm not going to speak for everybody else. I'm going to speak for myself. Between me and a couple other board members, I feel like there's such a divide that it's never going to work. So if we can find a training or some kind of retreat that's going to bring us together where we can understand each other, I'm good. I'll do it.
All right. That gives me my marching orders, so I appreciate that. All right. The only other thing that I kind of, and hoping maybe to collectively get this through our training is, I did a lot of talking to people when I was running, and including Dr. Kisner. And in talking with a couple board of supervisor members, what I was really interested to learn is that they meet with other board of supervisors from other areas near us, not far. And it sounded like the same kind of cohort that we currently have within our governor's school, those same counties. And they meet with them once a month to discuss whatever hot topic or challenge or something. They just meet very casually to talk. And
it's transportation. It's a lot of other things. That's not
yes, yeah, right. And so then when I was talking with Dr. Kisner, I was listening to him and how he's involved with not only our district in the VSBA, but also in a Northern Virginia superintendent's group. And, now he's all over the state and with, different people and learning and getting involved with. And I kind of feel like our supervisors are doing it. Our superintendent is doing it. We're kind of the ones in the middle, not. And while we do have VSBA once a year, I kind of think it would be a fun thing for maybe, especially in light of what we're kind of going through right now, it might be a fun thing once we're all able to get out, is to, meet with, and two of us meeting with, not as a whole board, because I know there's too many issues with that, but two of us maybe meeting with Spotsylvania, King George, Fredericksburg, just kind of around us to talk about some of the things that, their hot topics or, some of their things, just to keep that conversation from just being the seven of us going around. And so right. That's just one of my thoughts.
And we are doing that. And Holly and I, whether we're chair and vice chair or not, we have been through VSBA maintaining relationships with the folks in Spotsylvania. I had a relationship with Lori up in Prince William County. It's not as regimented as they do on the county level. it's all about personal relationships when you're doing with the school board. So Holly has reached out to, to the chair, the vice chair. I have as well. I was working in Spotsylvania, and Spotsylvania courted me to ask me some questions. So anyway, it's not as regimented as it is on the county level.
Right.
So it's a matter of personal preference. I mean, I can certainly introduce you to Erin. Holly can introduce you to Shelley and Ms. Shelley and everybody else. But I don't think there's anything that is as structured as they have on the county level.
Yeah. And I think maybe that might be, let's get our own house in order first, I would say. But then that might be, a stretch, and it's something we can discuss for sure later. But I just kind of feel like there's a lot to be learned from other places. And it's nice that we get the daily updates from VSBA and that sort of thing. But I think it just might be a little different if we get to, maybe once a quarter, have a meeting with, and call it whatever, District 3 or whatever we want to call it, and just maybe put something, let each school district host and say, it's your turn. What do you think?
Right. No, I got you on that one. And frankly, unless Scott has something else to offer, or Holly, I can tell you it's all been about personal relationships at this point on this level. I know that you've seen where we lie, on this level. We're not that important in the eyes of folks that are kind of doing their thing. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but just like in your personal life, we don't have to care what other people think of us. It's what we think of us.
Right. But if you don't have a lot of people like willing to like jump in and kind of say yes, let's have the person who's involved with the VSBA, do the thing to get us all together, it's not going to happen. So if there's not the infrastructure there to make it happen, it's not going to happen. So my point is that Holly and I have been doing this for a while. We've been in contact with Prince William and the folks. Holly even more so. I think she's done Spotsylvania, Prince William, and I think like King George and stuff. Anyway,
The city where I have my contacts.
City of Fredericksburg. Fine.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is that there's no infrastructure to help us along with that. We have to get out of our beds and say, okay, I'm going to call, Erin Graham tomorrow, and I'm going to have lunch with her at the Chinese place in South Point Park. That's it.
Right.
Let me make one comment. And I'd be interested in Dr. Kisner's. I mean, if I would think what would coalesce us in a regional type way is going to be a topic. We always try and do the legislative, and then they put the meeting on a Tuesday night. We could never go.
Right.
COVID and some of what's going on here may provide an opportunity for us to do that. But I also don't want to burden people right now that they're on the front lines. To me, that might be something that might be worth saying, hey, we're going to have a discussion. But again, we've got the social distancing. I haven't read the new things. But I do think more topic related, just like the Board of Supervisors, really.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's transportation. It's, maybe that might be worth it. But I think right now people are trying to get through to the end of the school year. But I think let's keep it open. We do have some contacts, in our varying jurisdictions, and perhaps that is something, because I do think we as a team, if there are things that come together, definitely legislatively, it's helpful if we're all on the same page, and the more that we meet, the better we can be as an advocate going forward.
Right, a little more impactful. Okay. All right, well, I want to go on to our new business, which is about our meetings And Missy attached some of the, I'm trying to scroll here, sorry. She attached some information that would be helpful to us about things that we've adopted. Now, I also know that we adopted and suspended some things, but I also can feel and hear in the meetings that we kind of need to be reminded of some things that would have been agreements already. And I was looking at policy 1108 specifically, and a couple of the things on there I think that came up in this last meeting was making sure that we have things on the meeting agenda in a way that works for us, so that we are not looking discombobulated, that when we approve the agenda that people know this is what we're following, this is what we're talking about, and this is what we're doing. And I think what I'm hearing is that maybe when at the beginning of a meeting, I think this last meeting, Holly, you asked Irene, was there something? And so she was able to put something on there, and we could have it refreshed and see it on there. And I think the pause or problem came with the Dr. Kisner in his remarks mentioned about a position that he was looking for, and as a way to be helpful to him, we tried to put it on, and it just kind of got a little bit lost. So the question I have, and this is truly just me being the new one here, is it possible, Holly, when you ask Irene if there's something to go on, if we then should pose the question to Dr. Kisner if he has something he wants to go on, so that it's still a seamless agenda that we work through?
In Holly's defense, okay, so she knew about this, and I apparently it was in the update, and I didn't read the update because I have been slammed here at work. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on here. So what we need to do is we need to look at a way that we're if there's something in an emergency situation such as this is not on Holly.
No. I'm not saying it's on Holly. I'm just saying, though, wording wise.
If there's something that we can impose, like chairman's prerogative or something like that. If the chairman says, I had all this stuff going on and I missed it, and I'm invoking my privilege to add this to the agenda, then that's great. Here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want to have happen what I'm afraid is going to happen, where members are going to get so involved in a situation, and they're going to look at Robert's rules, and they're going to say, I'm going to do this, and you can't stop me because this is what precedent has set, or this is what we've done before. I don't want to get into that crap. What I want to do is make sure that the chairman has full, regardless, I can't believe I'm going to say this, regardless of where we're at politically, that the chairman has the authority to.
Oh, she froze.
I don't know if anybody wants my thought on this, but I'm going to give it anyway. Here's the thing. If this was a problem in every meeting, I'd be willing to make some policy on it. This came up once on a topic that was known by most board members, and we tried to do that.
How long have I been talking where nobody can hear me?
Come back.
You froze a little bit, Irene.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you were at the part where you said you want to make sure that the chairman has the full authority, and then you froze.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So I want to make sure that the chairman has full authority with a majority of the board to make a mid-agenda change if something of an emergency should come up. But Dr. Kisner, listen, you knew this was coming up. You put it in there. All we need to do is make sure that we're talking to one another more often, right? Do we really need to change any of the rules? Holly missed it. If someone else, if another board member was aware of it, or if you needed to know, if you needed another board member to like make the motion, should we have done that? I don't know what the answer is. The answer, my question is, how do we do this and not have this come and bite us in the behind later on when politics comes into play on things like what we had to deal with transgender and all this other stuff? That's what I don't want to happen.
All right, I'm going to give my thoughts on this one and take it for what it's worth. I think that the meeting on the other day is sort of an outlier of this. The information was out there. We did not do it when the agenda was approved. I did say during Dr. Kisner's comments, I would entertain a motion when we got to action items to deal with this. Everybody was aware of that. It was said very clearly, and that's how we dealt with it. So that's how I felt as chair, was my way to try and say, we're going to put it on there. Again, the chairman's authority is only to offer the opportunity. It still requires 4 votes to pass. So I believe we go forward. Look, and if things start going on, then there may be a way to deal with it. I am not willing to, though, go and override all kinds of stuff and study Robert's rules, and during a time of somewhat suspended rules to make a lot of, huge changes. I think that there's also a difficulty, I believe, with the Google meetings of people hearing people when I even say things of saying, when we get to the action items, let's add that on there. I thought everybody had heard that. I guess not. So there is a difference between these Zoom or whatever these meetings are and when we're actually sitting in the room, that I would hate to change too much, because I am really hoping we get away from these types of meetings.
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you're right, Holly. My concern is, and I'll echo this one more time. If we act on something that another member is going to be able to say, well, we've already established precedent, and it's going to come back and bite us in the behind, that's what I have a problem with. So I would rather tackle it in the beginning, tackle it at the front end, and if we need to add it to our bylaws and say we're going to suspend the bylaws because there's a pandemic emergency right now, this does not apply going forward, then okay. But I just don't want to set precedent that, look, we've been through enough of this stuff in the past, I don't know, 4 years. We've heard people say, well, you did this before, and you did that before, and you did that before. No, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to nip it in the bud and say, this is what bylaws are for. If we choose to suspend the bylaws, that's part of it. If we choose to suspend the bylaws for Robert's rules, because Robert's rules shouldn't be part of suspending our bylaws. Those are separate. There's a separate way to run a meeting than there is for, whatever our rules are to engage. So maybe those are things we have to talk about too.
Again, my thought on this is, if we were in a normal situation, we could have gone to parliamentarian and stuff like that. I will probably not be supportive of changing anything at this point. I believe, based on the discussion, if there's any precedent that was set there, it was saying, wow, when Dr. Kisner requests something on a Friday, let's make sure somebody asks for it at the agenda at the agenda approval. Missed opportunity by 7 people, including myself.
I will take that one. But all of us read that stuff, so we're all being part of it. That if that is the precedent going forward, I can actually live with that one. But I don't think it's going to be somebody bringing something we've never heard of and putting it on there for a rapid approval. I don't think that's what this case was about.
I'm good. I was just more for information, trying to see what the feeling was. But for me, like I said, we already voted to suspend a lot of what we're doing because we're operating differently right now, and I just wanted to see what was it for me to learn. So I appreciate it.
All right, so I keep my thing keeps freezing here, and I've got my dogs are beating the front door down, so I'm gonna pop off. Is there anything you need from me before I do that?
Not really. I think the only two things in the old business going forward is to have more to look at the code of conduct, for me to work on the retreat options to bring before the board for a look at, and once we get that established, then I guess I'll poll you guys for another meeting once we get Dr. Kisner's little mini tech committee together to look over our code of conduct.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Susan, for putting this together, and
sure,
guys, thanks for being here. And I'm sorry I was late. And
Irene, thank you for allowing us to learn about your home life. It's very
oh, you have no idea. I have so much to tell you about. All right, guys, have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Enjoy the lake.
Hey, I know I'm supposed to stay on. Dr. Kisner, are you going to stay on for this conversation?
I can stay on for anything. What?